In a deeply personal and poetic account, my next guest has taken her decades-long search for her missing great-great-grandmother to both the page and the screen in her new book and docuseries, The Knowing. Please welcome award-winning author, journalist, and filmmaker, Tanya Talaga. Tanya, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
First off, huge congratulations on the docuseries premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival this year.
Thank you.
I can't imagine what that's like, working on something for so long and then playing it for a room full of people.
It's pretty wild, you know, and my mom was with me.
Oh, wow.
You know, my daughter was there, and so many of my relations and people from Northern Ontario, and we had Indigenous leaders from all over. They were all in the dock, and so I think we filled half the theater.
Oh, amazing. Okay, yeah.
For sure.
That's so cool. That's fantastic. Can you tell me a little bit more about the significance of the title, The Knowing?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So, every single First Nation, Métis, and Inuit family, we know of people in our families, in our communities, that just didn't come home from either Indian residential school or Indian hospitals or tuberculosis sanitariums or asylums. And for all of us, we wonder what happened to those people, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for a long time. And 3 years ago, when the Kamloops Indian Residential School, the findings of a potential 215 graves were announced, I was in Kamloops. The community had asked me to come out there and to start to write about what was happening. And when I was there, all of the survivors talked about people that they knew that just didn't come home from the school. And they called this the knowing. And when I heard that phrase, I just thought, wow, it's the same for my family and for every other First Nations family that I know.
It's just this saying that unless you know it in your gut, you know exactly what it is.
Exactly.
Wow, that's incredibly powerful. I can't imagine that. But what started out, though, as a search for your great-great-grandmother led to just even more discoveries, I know. So what can you tell us about your findings?
Well, it was my mom that asked me to look for her great-grandma.
Yeah.
My mom was raised by her grandmother, Liz, and her mom was Annie. And Annie and Liz never spoke about who they were, where they were from. They never spoke their language. It was like Liz, it was like she didn't like who she was as a person. She had been to Indian residential school, and she came out very much a staunch Catholic, and she loved the Queen, you know, and that was her life going forward. And she never spoke about her mom, Annie. But my mom knew that Annie was buried somewhere in Toronto. She didn't know where, but she knew that Annie disappeared in 1930. And she was sent to what we now know was the Ontario Hospital. The Ontario Hospital is now the Centre for Addictions and Mental Health. And there was a campus at the Lakeshore, which is Humber College now.
Yeah.
And that is where Annie was sent. We have no idea why. We don't know exactly the circumstances about how she got there. But she died there, and then she was placed in an unmarked grave, which is about 4 kilometers north of Humber. It's just off the Gardiner Expressway.
Yeah, that Evans kind
That's
of there.
right,
Yeah.
that's right. So it's so bizarre, because I've lived in Toronto my entire life, and I've driven that highway, you know, on my way to Sherway Gardens or to IKEA. And right there, she was there this whole time.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I know you've talked about the difficulty in finding accurate records in your research as a journalist. What do you think, I mean, I can't imagine how difficult that was facing that, but what do you think we can do to help make records more accessible and this information more accessible? Because when you do find them, are they accurate? Like, how are you able to find these things?
You know, that's an issue. I mean, the spelling of Annie's husband, Samson Wemestigoose, his last name, we have 7 different spellings.
Wow.
And we were basically at the mercy of whoever was writing the record down. You know, what census taker or which church official was writing the name down. And they would hear different things because they weren't used to the language or anything else. I think that people should be rallying around survivors and are asked for the records. I mean, the records are in so many places. They're in municipalities, they're in provinces, departments and agencies, they're in universities, they're in museums, galleries. I mean, there are records somewhere, and of course they are in the churches. In particular, the Vatican. The Vatican has so many papers, and there have been agreements, and we are inching closer to finding those papers. But it is just taking so long. And all of those records really need to be returned back here to Canada in order to aid our survivors in their search for their missing loved ones.
Yeah, completely. Oh my gosh. No, how did this book turn into the docuseries? Was that always in the plan, or was it something that you didn't think of doing, but just found all of this more storytelling that you needed to actually speak?
Yeah, pretty well. You know, I'm a journalist, and you know, I used to work at the Toronto Star, and just as I was leaving the Star, they were throwing cameras at us. They were asking us to do video, and I have friends like Michelle Shepard, who she does all these incredible documentaries, and it just was really apparent to me as I was writing this book, I needed to document it. I had started my own company after my first book, 7 Fallen Feathers, and we did a documentary called Spirit to Soar as well. And it just became so, I don't know, it was like a light bulb going off. People need to see. Other than read too, you know, they need to see the land. They need to see the rivers and the vast distances that our people traveled. Like Annie is actually from Petobic, Fort Albany, up the James Bay coast. And that's really quite far, far away. It's about 1,000 kilometers northeast of Thunder Bay. Which is my home community, is Fort William First Nation. And to see the distances she traveled in her lifetime, this is the beginning of the 20th century. It's remarkable. The rivers were really our roadways. And so I wanted to visually show the land and also the survivors. They needed to tell their stories that I meet along the way, and family members too. And it's nice to document them.
Yeah, again, I think there's so much value in hearing people tell their stories that you lose something sometimes when you put it on paper or put it through your own translation, essentially. So that's absolutely amazing. Again, the companion piece of the docuseries with the book, it's absolutely amazing what you've done. Thank you so much for doing this work, and thank you so much for being here with us today. Hey, Mary here. What did you think? Drop your comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of the good stuff.